So we need then to position a couple of things to address this. So the first one is a set of principles to draw from. And Carolyn, please introduce people to this.
Thank you. So ISO 37000 is the new governance of organizations guidance that's come out of the International Standards Organization. And it's really positioned at governance of organizations, and it's all the roles involved in the governance of organizations. In fact, right in the beginning, when they talk about setting the context and the conditions, the right conditions for governance, it does talk about integrated governance. And that's recognizing that there's a thread of governance throughout the organization. So yes, the governing body, the board of trustees, etc., the governing body is responsible for the governance and accountable for the governance of the organization. But the consequences of that governance is felt throughout the organization, and the principles need to be applied. So essentially, the principles are written with the primary governance principle sitting in the middle, that being the purpose of the organization. And in fact, this principle is double-sided. There's the purpose and the organizational values. So it basically what it says is that you can't fulfill your purpose if it's outside of the values, your behaviors, your norms that you've set for the organization. And then around that, you've got the your foundational governance principles. These are the things that you're going to be purposefully focusing on when you're governing. And beyond the purpose, one of the things you focus on is that value generation. So when you spoke about value generation earlier, David, this really resonated with me, because what that principle is saying, and it's the only one that's really gone into a little more detail about the practices. It's basically saying, you need to establish an environment, a system for ensuring that you're delivering value. You're not only creating value, you're actually delivering it and overseeing the delivery of it. You've got it aligned with your organizational principles and policies, and that you're actually distributing value at the end of the day when value has been created in a balanced way according to the objectives that you set. So not all stakeholders in a capitalistic environment, not all stakeholders are going to get everything that they want. So you're going to have to balance and create a balance between, is it the shareholders, is it the customers, is it the accounting for your use of carbon or your production of carbon. So it's that kind of balancing, and that setting those objectives give a clear outline in terms of then how the strategy aligns with those achieving those value generation objectives. And then, of course, the strategy being a key component of the governance of an organization, which needs to be overseen, in terms of making sure that it's tracking against the principles that have been set, and that the governing body is able to demonstrate its accountability to the organization for its governance of the organization, including its oversight of the strategy, and the organization can demonstrate its accountability for the use of the resources that's been given to it. So I think those foundational governance principles are really important. Of course, in the 21st century, there's more than just the basics. So the basics really come from the background of Professor Garrett, Bob Tricker, John Carver, Professor Mervyn King. Their thinking really has gone into those foundational, but in the 21st century, we need more than that. As you say, stakeholder engagement, critical, ethical and effective leadership, making sure you have the right data to make the decisions. You can't get data out of the PowerPoints. Risk governance, you see those OKRs, that you see that's one of the systems that we're going to be looking at. Social responsibility and viability and performance over time being the two sustainability factors, making sure that when you are implementing your strategy or you're enabling your strategy, that you do consider your impact on the environment and society, but likewise that you're agile enough to consider those impacts on you as well. The floods in Sydney, we just had fires in Sydney, now we've got floods in Sydney. In fact, we've got floods all over the world. So, and then we've got other cities in the world that are in day zero, no water. So making sure that we consider those larger factors in our sustainability. And then, of course, the ultimate objective of governance is so that the organization can achieve these outcomes in terms of being responsible for the resources, stewarding the resources that you have at your disposal. your own resources and the resources, the natural resources and societal resources, goodwill. There we spoke about that in terms of you're going to have to balance your resources between run and change and various change initiatives. Effective performance, of course, setting targets and achieving your targets, and being agile when you are achieving your targets, and being flexible in terms of your targets. You might have to re-baseline. And then obviously, while you're doing all of this, behaving with the right ethics, behaving according to your organizational values, behaving as individuals, behaving as an organization, as they call it, a good corporate citizen. But then also it's the leadership behaving properly. And I won't go into leadership behaving properly, given you guys are in the UK. But that's just a whistle stop in terms of how strategy fits in with this new internationally agreed benchmark for governance.
There's lots of good stuff in here. People, you have to buy it, but the standard is, I read it and really liked it and found it easy to read, to be honest. But it's a great set of principles to run your organization by. But I guess the challenge is, what do you run your organization with? And we need to, while the goal isn't to implement an ISO 37000 compliant organization, there are lots of principles in here that we already have or should be considering. So how do we move on from, how do we get beyond the book and apply these to our situations?
Can I just mention quickly that APMG International has a couple of courses on this. So we've got the foundations of foundational certification on 37000. APMG also has the business relationship management certifications, and that has some of this thinking in it as well. So there are some go-to places if you did want to become certified.
Yeah. There'll be some links in here as well. I'll point people out to, but just zipping along, the principles are great, the methods are great, but we need to implement an operating model. And the illustration on the right there, kind of showing that we've got a number of wheels turning in our organizations, and we need to align them so they all work together. And to my mind, unless we put some effort into getting those wheels to align and have a perspective which looks across the machine, not just out of one area, we're going to struggle to make this machine work effectively. So the business integrated governance approach is about creating a model and applying that to an organization to address the challenges in ISO 37000 and enable that to be carried out. There's quite a bit to it, so we'll just do an introduction, but basically it's a model that explains, and I'll just read this, how to connect strategic drivers, the BAU organization, those that are focusing on managing products and implementing change. It's about getting a holistic, integrated, nicely ungrinding cog based machine. It enables information-centric decisions, the key principle of ISO 37000, enabling clear accountability, a clear principle of ISO 37000. It's been created by a club as it's now a community interest company, and there's a version of it embedded within Praxis. And the areas it looks into are is your organization understood? Is it documented? Does it know its roles and responsibilities? Has it got an effective governance operation that connects top to bottom and it's managed? Underpinning that, have you got an effective information and data capability that provides the information to run governance with? Have you got machinery to help you create information so that it's not a pain in the backside to have to go and manufacture this report or that to operate it? Accountability and operation of accountability underpins it, and empowerment of people to be accountable. But it talks about some key principles of having business support in place to make this happen, not just project support, but business support, because business support needs to go beyond the project into products, into business as usual, into operations to enable us to manage our resources, issues and risks, as well as on projects. Assurance was a point that somebody raised. So are we doing the right things the right way? And is our leadership providing the environment and culture and drive to operate consistently, and funding the change and improvement to get us up a level to operate this effectively? So there's some links there to delve into some more material. So please do have a look at that. There's a wealth of it. It's all free and in the public domain. And they're called P3M Data Club. It's a community interest company. There's a website. There's an active user group. It's been going a few years now. It's developed this language set that you're free to use. It's had over 100 people contribute to the thoughts behind it, the content within it, and the review of it. And it's published in Praxis. So some of you who'll know APMG's portfolio, Praxis is part of that. And we've published a version of this in the Praxis Framework, so you can consume it there as well.